Hi, everyone.
Hello, Brian.
Good
to see you.
Good
to see you.
Hey, Max.
Hello.
How are you?
Good to see you. How are you? You're both mic'd up. Fantastic. I mean, I can try to give an introduction, but I think you guys know those two folks. Brian Johnson, he's been like a tech entrepreneur recently making waves in the longevity field by trying to reinvent how the entire field in a way looks at what we can do currently with our bodies. He's also like the CEO of Kernel, a new company that he just started. And Balaji, he used to be a scientist, probably still thinks like a scientist, a critical scientist, built like a massive genomics company, I guess almost a decade ago. Then went to A16Z, became like the CTO of Coinbase. And I think his most recent big endeavor is writing the book, The Network State, that inspired a lot of people and trying to push the network state narrative forward. Thank you guys both for being here today. Originally, I had you on separately, so we're going to do things a little bit different now, and I'm going to see just how this discussion evolves. Maybe, Balaji, to you first. Like you started a company the normal way. If you were to start a company nowadays, would you, especially in the biotech space, how would you go about it? Would you do the traditional route, or you would actually try to do like a decentralized DAO approach to solve those problems?
It depends on what you're trying to do, but in general, I would try to avoid the U.S. medical system as much as possible because it has third-party pricing, fourth-party regulation, and fifth-party payment. So like the AMA, for example, sets the prices through the CPT coding system. FDA and HHS and so on regulate it, and then insurers pay for it. And so a normal buyer-seller relationship where you're going and buying a pizza from somebody, it's not you buying something from a doctor. The doctor doesn't know what they're selling, doesn't know at what price they're selling it, doesn't have control over their product, will basically just, it's not like a normal vendor relationship. By contrast, something like Bumrungrad Hospital, which is in Southeast Asia, is like a full-stack hospital that's just pure cash, for profit. You go there, and because it's customer service, you can just check in, check out. Everything is fully integrated. The medical record stuff, all the stuff that's like the future of medicine there is the present already there, right? And future medicine in America is the present there, where you have a fully electronic medical record. Everything's all integrated. So I think what you should do is look for all the edges in the medical system. So medical tourism, right to try laws, LDTs, so you can run a lab without going through the FDA 510K path. Whether you do a DAO, I think a DAO is useful if you need to essentially get political change through in order to get your product through, like to actually build a coalition of your customers. And you want people who are not just there for speculation, they're there because they actually want the treatment, or they have a family member who wants the treatment or something like that. So you have true ideological zealots. 1,000-person DAO of zealots is much bigger than 50,000 people who are like win airdrop, okay? So you might do aspects of it with crypto and aspects of it decentralized, but you start with the goal and then you figure out the tool for the goal.
Okay.
I could say more, but go ahead.
Brian, with you currently starting or like having started a new company, how do you think about that, those two different approaches that you could take?
Yeah, there's a big difference right now in how nation states are dealing with entrepreneurs. And so the United States of America is like Balaji is saying, is pretty, the systems are pretty fixed, and there's several sovereigns out there doing innovation in how they're treating entrepreneurs and innovation. And so I would try to find regulation arbitrage in building something. It makes the difference between what you can, so you could probably take ambition like an order of magnitude greater in certain jurisdictions. Otherwise, you have to take these small bite-sized pieces where really not worth the entrepreneurial endeavor because you're just, you can't accomplish anything meaningful. So yeah, arbitrage on a nation-state level is where I'd focus.
Yeah, and actually to connect the loop there, there's a video I tweeted a little while ago with our visit to Prospera. Mm-hmm. And Brian's in that, I'm in that, Novel is in that, Zuko's in that. But basically, Prospera in Honduras is a special economic zone that allows biotech innovation. And a company named MiniCircle was set up there. And some of our friends went and got MiniCircle treatment. And it's experimental treatment, by the way. It's possible that there's some side effects in the long run, but no plane crashes, no planes. No train crashes, no trains. right? If we, at some point, if you go back to the old chemistry handbooks, CRC Handbook of Chemistry and Physics, before there was Wikipedia and so on, it was printed out, and they had like the taste and smell of these different compounds. So some guy, went and sniffed cyanide, and he wrote almonds. He took one for the team. That's how you know what cyanide smells like, right? Because this guy, basically, to drive science forward, he, put his body on the line, right? And so if you can do bungee jumping, if you can do skydiving, if you can enlist in the military, if you want to land on Mars, well, we need health pioneers who are willing to take calculated risks, and we give them the Medal of Honor, or we treat them like heroes, and we compensate them well, because that risk tolerance is actually what pushes us forward, right? People who do tattoos, body modification, this is really just the next step. So anyway, so some people were on Prospera. They're, it's my body, my choice. They're able to take an experimental treatment. And, one of them is basically feels like it's Captain America. He's like super jacked, like, 2 months later. And it's not steroids. It's actually something different. It's basically a follistatin treatment. And Bezos is now following him because, so that's a full loop, right? We funded Prospera. That's a startup jurisdiction. MiniCircle is there. It's invented the treatment. Someone got the treatment. It's working. Jeff Bezos is following it. And now we've got a model, and maybe we can replicate and scale that out, right? And worst case, what happens is, again, bungee jumping is legal, skydiving is legal, euthanasia is legal, right? You can kill yourself. Why can't you improve yourself?
So it's interesting. Niklas from Vitalia, which is in Prospera, is actually here. He's going to speak later about it and give you some insights and pictures and what's happening there, and it's great. And do you think this is the only way, though? Does it have to be an exit? Does it have to be a zone somewhere else where you could try it? Is it, or will that somehow? I think you always talk about the flippening.
Yeah.
Or will at some point the flippening happen in other nation states as well? Or do you have to go to a small state and bring that knowledge back?
It's both. It's both.
Yeah.
But basically, I think. Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead.
Well, so I think that tax is continuous, but regulation is discrete. Right? So tax, the difference between 10%, 12%, okay, you can still run your business or whatever, right? Regulation is 0 or 1. It's like illegal, and now it's legal, right? And in theory, you can do gray market things and so on and so forth. In practice, once it's white market, once it's legal, there's so many more pointers that can come in, so many more businesses that can ship to you. You can connect above ground, you can put it on your resume, and you can recruit open, there's many, many things that are good when you have white market versus gray market. For example, in a sense, the transition from communism to capitalism in China or in Russia, but China alone, that transition was worth $10 trillion and the improvement of every single Chinese person's life. And that was just a change in regulation. And it was actually both of the things you're talking about, because Hong Kong and Singapore and Taiwan in different ways gave examples of people of Chinese ethnicity and culture practicing capitalism. And if you had been told that capitalism was bad for 50 years in China, you'd have said, well, what if someone commits fraud? What happens then, huh? Capitalist, it doesn't work. And you say, well, actually, there's civil code line 1234 that deals with it. So you actually, once you get into the white market area, you're not saying there aren't problems with this. There's going to be side effects of these treatments, but you have the external things, and their example allowed actually Deng Xiaoping to import that external example and then modernize China. So we go and do these special economic zones, and we pull the best folks out there, and they are getting jacked, and they're coming back, and they're like, look, right? Brian's the first. I'll check back in next year. Let's see if I'll be at number 10 or something like that. And then that the proof is in the pudding, right? With cryptocurrency, the proof is that your wealth just went vertical. Even if people didn't believe in Bitcoin, even if they didn't believe in cryptocurrency, they saw this guy next door, some crazy Randian, libertarian, Mises, Hayek, like the UFC fighter who's talking about Mises, and suddenly he's rich beyond their wildest dreams. They're like, okay, maybe this cryptocurrency thing is something going for it. So as crazy as all these health guys are, if they're super jacked, everyone's like, okay, maybe there's something going for it. Go ahead, and that's Brian. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
A lot of nation states are not responsive to market signals. They don't respond to normal competitive environments. And so when different environments are they're making headway in enabling things that others are not, these nation states are very slow to respond. And so I think it's sensible that the speed of innovation and discovery is going to accelerate. We have these computational tools of intelligence, and with that, the difference between the innovations is going to be much faster. So I'm bullish that these innovations can be done in small areas of jurisdiction, and that the intelligence that big nation states have is the same in small nation states. And so I think we'll see a flourishing of these innovations happen.
So, and you're also moving those innovations forward, obviously. You currently are thinking about like creating something like your healthy living, don't die nation state or state. You've in your book always referenced
Keto kosher and stuff like that, yeah.
You always reference like this one commandment that should be part of the network state that is held up high, and that's the standard everybody has to adhere to. So how are you currently developing that? Do you have like different philosophies there, or are you both converging to the same philosophy? Or?
I think don't die is a great one commandment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because it's a moral thing that you can derive many things from it downstream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like the essence. But how's it going? I mean, what's your steps?
Yeah, I mean, don't die is the most played game by every human on the planet every second of every day. So we look both ways before we cross the street. We throw out moldy food. We would leave this room if we were threatened. And so it is played more than capitalism. It's played more than religion. It is the most played game. And so it leads very naturally into being a practical and philosophical, economic, moral, ethical, social framework of the future of existence. And so it definitely is, it relates to diet and health and exercise, but it really is an endeavor to try to contemplate what will be the guiding philosophy for the 21st century when we step into giving birth to superintelligence. And if you look at the current ideologies that we have today, the current economic frameworks, I currently don't think any one of them satisfies the need to solve the problems we have on the timescales we need to solve them. And so, yeah, I think Balaji and I are converging that we see the world in a very similar way of what needs to be emergent in the world right now. And so, yeah, I mean, I tried to, I guess 3 years ago, I endeavored to say, is it possible that we could say don't die in this moment? Is it a pipe dream, or is there some glimmer of hope? And so 3 years in, I wouldn't have believed that we would accomplish this much in this short period of time. And so I think it's actually, for the first time in human history, that you could say don't die with a straight face and not be left out of the room.
I mean, you're don't dying so far, so that's good.
And by the way, there's lots of things that in human history, people were considered crazy for thinking they could fly. There were myths about Icarus and how, this guy was so arrogant he thought he could fly, and his wings got melted and he fell down. And now we have commercial air flight every day. Okay, minus Boeing, but we do have commercial air flight. Okay, and so for literally the entire history of humanity up until the Wright brothers, basically, flight was just some silly thing that only a lunatic would ever do, and then it became technologically possible, right? So that's like the 0 to kind of 1 moment. That's, I think, what we might be able to do with biotech.
Yeah, I wonder if we should look almost more at animal rights. There were always flying birds, so we knew flying was possible, but we haven't found we have found slow aging animals, but not immortal animals in a way.
So there is, I mean, there's animals that can regenerate limbs. There's turtles that live hundreds of years. There's trees that are very long-lived. There's mice where we've radically changed their level of senescence and reversed it. I mean, there's a lot of literature on this where we actually do have, if you take the animal kingdom, that is actually, I'm going to use that example. That's a good example. Animals can fly. People didn't think we could fly, but animals could. We should show all the long-lived animals and all the stuff that they can do.
Yeah, and it doesn't have like a speed of light limit. Like you don't need to break some fundamental physics. Like it's a direct path.
That's right. And just the fact that you can have a child, right? There's stem cell biology is all about how did, from a grown adult, you give birth to obviously it's 2 grown adults, but you give birth to a child who's starting anew. There's a reboot in our genes somehow, right? And can we unlock that? That's the entire area of stem cell medicine, regenerative medicine, right? So there's some proof of concept that this is possible, and could we unlock that for existing adult humans?
Correct. Comparative biology, learning from animals why they age slower, and the event of embryogenesis, right, where what some scientists call like the ground zero, where in a way, old cells become young again. There's like something to learn from us for all of us that we probably can somewhat implement. Maybe on that, currently Blueprint is like very heavily focused on lifestyle, right? You take care of like all your nutrition, your sleep, and sprinkle a little bit of currently available biotechnology on it, like the mini circle and things like that. Do you see like a Blueprint evolving more towards like very hardcore biotech as soon as it's available?
Yes.
Or how do you think about it, and how you're enabling it currently? You have like supplements. You don't have like the biotech stack yet that you can order with Blueprint.
Yeah. We're going to implement all the technology. We're going to develop technology. You know, gene therapy is very promising. I had my first gene therapy in September. And so I think that as these technologies become available and as we can develop our own, the objective is to get to longevity escape velocity for all of us. And that would be the don't die network state. And it would be doing things at scale, economically, in a way that would be more compelling than anyone could do individually. And so it's pooling resources to accomplish something that can be done in timeframes that most people don't think they can be done because the current systems of society just make it very slow.
And during like your journey of health and rejuvenation, did you actually gain any surprising insights about yourself, your human body, while you were working through Blueprint? I mean, what's like the craziest thing that you almost learned about yourself and thought, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the stats we've acquired. So if we're looking at my DNA methylation patterns, I've slowed my speed of aging to 0.64. That is currently, it is better than 100% of 50, 40, and 30-year-old males and 99% of 20-year-old males. And so, roughly speaking, this is thank you. Thank you very much. Roughly speaking, that means for every 12 months that pass, I age 7.6. Now that's an approximation, but it's to get the point across that you can dramatically slow one's speed of aging. You can also speed it up. And so that plus, some of the markers like my total bone mineral density is in the top 0.02% of 30-year-olds, which is age min for the test. My inflammation markers are lower than 88% of 10-year-olds. My body fat and my body muscles in the top 99.5 percentile. And it just goes on. Like we really have, what we tried to do is I have a team of 30 medical professionals, and we scoured through all the scientific literature that has ever been done by Homo sapiens. We ranked everything according to power laws, and then we said, can we put all the science into me, and then can we make me the most measured person in history? And we did that. And I think that it's interesting that doing that scientific experimentation, even though it's an N equals 1 and it has those drawbacks, the evidence is pretty compelling that you can meaningfully change one's rate of aging and their health and wellness, especially when I was coming from a pretty bad spot of having participated in grind culture for quite some time and had a decade of chronic depression. So if I can do it, you can do it. It's very encouraging, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, I always think, people always talk about a magic pill, right? But that won't exist. You have to tweak multiple things in your body almost at the same time to get like a full body effect. At the same time, you could almost make the argument like you're as old as your oldest organ, and it's the weakest link that breaks you, right? So even if you rejuvenate almost everything but one, that might still be an issue. How do you think about that? And what's your oldest organ? You always talk about your youngest ones. Where you currently still as strong as everything is? What's like the thing where you really have to work on, where you almost worried maybe?
Yeah, my left ear is age 64. I shot a lot of guns as a kid. I would hold a gun like this, and I was exposed my left ear to the sound of the gun. And we've not found any therapies yet to improve my hearing. My right ear is like age 32, so it's fine. But yeah, we've had a few hiccups. Like for example, we were trying to rejuvenate my thymus. This is the gland right behind your sternum, and it's responsible for your immune system. And so we were successful in rejuvenating my thymus by 7 years, so we made it younger, but it came at a cost. We were using human growth hormone, and it came with quite a few side effects, intracranial pressure, headaches. It kind of messed with my blood glucose. And so we found that sometimes the therapies have this effect where it's not that they're all good, that the HGH increased my speed of aging. It did rejuvenate my thymus, but we're finding that there's a complicated reaction to the body to all these therapies. It's not just a clean, it's good for all things.
Balaji, what's your rate of aging?
I don't know. I need to get. I've certainly added a little more gray, but like I should actually get my most recent biomarker panel and get serious about it. We might have something to announce on that in a bit, so we'll see.
Maybe thinking about it, a lot of things we just discussed are like very novel, very new, right? There a certain amount of people is interested in that. More people are getting interested about that. How do you think about educating the world and people about that, and how does DeSci fit into this recreating education, maybe full educational reforms? You talk a lot about how a lot of higher academic institutions are broken.
Yeah.
How do you think all that fits together?
So definitely we'll have more on this, but basically, I mean, the reason I'm here is I believe in DeSci. I've invested in a bunch of stuff in the space. I think I'm glad it exists as a category and that people are talking about it. I think you can now be like essentially a totally independent professor, faculty of one, if you wanted to be, like sort of what Huberman kind of is, what some folks have done with like Vita Dow or things like that, faculty of one or a small faculty. I think we're going to need there's centralization, decentralization, re-centralization, and re-centralization is the least popular word in the world because either people are like, why can't you just fix the existing universities or the existing institutions? Or they are into decentralization and say, why would we ever want to be slaves again underneath that horrible structure of centralization? But re-centralization, I think, is actually the pragmatic approach where you do create a new core that people can align back around that fixes the problems of the old one. In a sense, decentralization is almost like the old building's on fire, you hit the fire alarm, you all, some guy jumps out the window, a guy runs out the door, you all spread out. And then you need to like regroup and build a new building, right? Decentralization is break glass in case of fire alarm. I'm very glad it exists. There's a lot of things that should be done decentralized when the old system is broken, but then you want to build a new system. So what does ReSci look like? Like, the next version of science where you decentralize science and you re-centralize science under like a new banner, TBD.
Yeah, it's interesting that you make the point. I currently always look at science. It's not fully centralized, it's not fully decentralized, right? It's almost like this scientific oligarchy that is like running the scientific regimes. And it has, to some extent, the worst of both worlds, right?
Yeah, right.
But sometimes I wonder if we say currently maybe it's like 70% centralized and 30% decentralized, if we would go to 100% centralization for certain projects.
Let me give some very specific things on this issue. First is, currently academia is optimizing for prestigious citation over independent replication. And that's like a good compact thing where all the metrics are on like, the H factor and like how many papers you have with how many citations, because that used to be a proxy for an important paper. But, the Goodhart's law thing is once a metric becomes a measure, people game it, enough such that you can just cite and the paper doesn't actually do anything, right? By contrast, so that's like quote unquote science, right? Actual science is like, Maxwell's equations. If your phone, every single time you use your phone, you're doing an independent replication of Maxwell's equations, right? So that is trillions of independent replications. That's true science as opposed to prestigious citation. Just to underscore the difference. When a paper comes out in Nature last week, some, NPC on Twitter will hold it like a sheaf and be like, science just said that you need to do X, right? And what they mean by that is they mean like a prestigious institution and a person from the prestigious institution managed to get a paper there and it's published, therefore it is capital T true. What are you, a conspiracy theorist and you don't believe in capital S science, right? And the thing is that paper hasn't been replicated even once, probably. Right? Now, how do you actually, when it's replicated a lot though, even if there's no paper on it, if it's a piece of open source code, that can get replicated lots of times. How do you know? BillBot. BillBot is better science than Nature, okay? Because BillBot is replicating every single time you push and you do a build, you're doing a replication, the code works, right? Imagine if you would say, it's a joke in engineering, works on my machine, but not on yours, right? That means there's some hidden dependency. That's a joke within computer science. It's not a joke in biology. Oh, it worked at my lab bench, but not at yours, right? Because the conditions, lots of experiments don't replicate. Lots of things that are published in Nature don't replicate. Pharma, when they try to replicate things coming out of Nature, it's like, 20%. I think there's a study like by Amgen like 10 years ago trying to replicate things that came out. It's like sub 20%. This is the whole replication crisis. So how do you actually, once you articulate the problem as prestigious citation is being privileged over independent replication, how do you get replications? Well, first you need to make them legible and tangible. With open source, with BillBot, I'm just giving BillBot as an example, continuous integration is a more general term. you can just, you know how you go to a GitHub project, you see a check that something is actually working, all tests passing. So you start to basically say, okay, the replication is a test, okay? And at least for computer science, for statistics, for anything that is in that domain, you can publish a paper with the code base, and someone else can go and run it and replicate your results. That's called reproducible research. And so reproducible research works for everything digital. So that at least is one path forward. And then the last step is to say, okay, now we know that the problem is prestigious citation over independent replication. We know reproducible research gets us the independent replications, but that only works for the digital stuff. How does the physical stuff work? And I think this is the third step. This is something which is in its infancy right now. There's stuff that I think will be seen as predicates of this, but what I call crypto instruments, right? So an instrument where, when it's measuring stuff, it is also hashing it and writing that on chain as soon as possible in some form, as sort of like chain of custody. You know, for example, for a criminal case, it's a very high stakes case. There's chain of custody that shows, oh, the fingerprints were put into this bag, and all of this stuff. There's like, it's like photographed and tagged, and you don't just like move it around in any way, right? We have something called a clinical trial pre-registration, where you don't just YOLO an experiment. You kind of say, I'm going to do it, and then you publish the results regardless, so that avoids publication bias. You know, at NCBI, for example, when you look at genomic data sets, they will include the experimenter and other kind of experiment metadata, because often the difference between two experiments is not actually, let's say, the raw gene expression data, but the experimental metadata, like what day it was done in the lab, and that's actually the hidden upstream variance. So these are, you know, examples where sort of the metadata, the crypto instrument type data, could help us resolve issues in the physical world, because what happens is you have an instrument, it records the data, it puts it on chain, it hashes it, maybe not all of it, but at least the hash. And now you can run the reproducible research stuff, and the only thing that is the remaining link that you still have to trust is that this data was put on chain in the right form at that time. So now you don't have to say, oh, trust science, right? Instead you go, you run the repo, and you look at the data set, and if you distrust the data set, you go to the individual row, you see it on chain, you see the hash, and you can backtrack it all the way. This is the type of forensic stuff that people have done on like COVID origins, for example. They're like, what experiment did people do to put the rat G genome on chain? You know, how did that actually happen? So this kind of forensics becomes more and more possible if you build it in from the beginning with crypto instruments. So that's my summary of how to fix science.
Yeah, I think
There's more, but
it's
yeah.
interesting. Like 2 years ago in Singapore, you talked about on-chain data for science as well. I think so far almost nobody has built it, right? Those machines where you can just like...
We're starting. So Farcaster works now, right? Okay. And so Farcaster is a concrete implementation of what I was thinking of as a ledger of record. It still needs some improvement, but it's basically like a real crypto Twitter, right? Where every user has the ability to sign messages, they've got integrated wallet, all that type of stuff. Farcaster will eventually get to the point where you can essentially have the entire Farcaster blockchain effectively on-chain and hash as block space improves. Now, you start with tweets and posts or the equivalent there, and people are just doing, you know, just normal chit-chat or whatever. Eventually, people can post the entire PDF, but not just the PDF, also the source code, also the data set, to Farcasters, a bunch of attachments. Boom, there you go. It's just like when we tweet out, you know, people are using tweets to announce wars now, right? Literally, people are like, okay, Iran said this, Biden said this, okay, no war today. Oh, thank God, right? So, like, Twitter is the war zone in multiple senses of the term. It's being used for, like, the highest functions of state, right? So certainly we can use a crypto Twitter for, you know, basically hashing papers, right? We'll get there. And now we start actually having a true chain of custody all the way back, you know, play on words, chain of custody. I know I talked a lot. Go ahead.
So, Brian, you like the n=1, you're the prototype. How do you think about reproducibility and what your regimen that you're doing to yourself and testing things out, how that can be reproduced? I mean, you have the rejuvenation Olympics, right, where people were doing their methylation, but do those people have different regimes, or do you have like a group measurements that people follow, or is it like a way of like crowdsourcing money for people trying what you do and we measure all of them? How do you think about the,
Yeah, when I started, it was very apparent that the health and wellness world was a lot like religion, where the King James version of the Bible can support hundreds of denominations. They can all claim that God is their true God. And health and wellness is kind of the same, like pick your guru. And so I was trying to figure out how to settle that, and largely because the use case was my parents. They don't really care who's debating who and who has some special theory of whatever's working. They just want to know what to eat for breakfast. And so I was trying to solve a problem for my parents and other people where they don't want to go out and spend hours reading books and listening to podcasts and taking their own notes and trying to figure out how to become an expert sufficiently, so you have the ability to do it yourself. And so I did it myself, and then I shared the entire thing with everyone. So I open sourced everything we did, all the protocols, all the data, and we now currently have a few thousand people doing Blueprint in a self-experimentation study. So it's not controlled, but still there's people are doing it, and it's our first step. We will do something more controlled in the future. We wanted to get quite a few people doing this, so in time we'll do it. The stack we've built at Blueprint has 74 interventions. It's built upon the science that we mined in the project, so it all has population level studies. So we think it maps pretty well to a safe first product. But in time, we'll want to be much more robust and rigorous. And then if that's especially true as we bridge to more, let's say, capable therapies.
Excited to see that move forward and go in a way a little bit decentralized as well. I would like to open questions up to the audience, the left and right microphones. We probably have time for 2 or 3. Just run down there and grab your microphone if you're, maybe we can make it a competition.
I can go if that's all right.
Yeah. Go ahead there.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Balaji. I'm Tony. I'm an entrepreneur of a cancer biotech company. Really interesting what you guys are describing in regard to I suppose, well, number one, decentralization, but number two, also like starting off with a small n size and growing larger over time. To what degree do you envision that a lot of like the vision of what you have in mind is going to be more adopted by the mass like culture worldwide versus to what degree do you see it as really more established as really like small enclaves perhaps in like the small experimental regions before it does in fact actually become mainstream, perhaps adopted by the US or Europe or any of the larger like bodies that have a lot of those I suppose established, entrenched bureaucratic processes that do slow things down. Many of the things that you've spoken extensively that you don't generally see as like where the innovation happens. Like, how do you see that path toward getting to like mass adoption? I guess my question for you.
You want to take that?
Go ahead.
Well, so yeah, I think everything that tech people have done kind of on the weekend, this is, my friend Chris Dixon talks about this, like the things that tech people do on the weekends, everybody else does 5 or 10 or 15 years later. Like, example, Palm Pilot and then iPhone, or like World of Warcraft and then Fortnite. Uber, and then everybody, using ride sharing, and Facebook at Harvard, and then everybody else uses it, and a million things like that. So I think it's n equals 1, perhaps, but it's extremely large effect sizes, which are undeniable, right? That's, essentially the entire modern FDA era is about minimizing side effect size, not maximizing effect size. Or even worse, minimizing bad PR, not maximizing, actual results in health, right? And so if you've got n equals 1, but the effect size is massive, and it's photographed and it's documented and so on, that should replicate very easily. In fact, everything Brian is doing is built to replicate. He publishes the citations, publishes the measurements, and so on. So this is why we think very similarly. We just kind of come at the same thing from the x-axis or the y-axis, right? And so everything I've been talking about in terms of independent replication, it's n equals 1, but it's built to scale to n equals unlimited, as opposed to, not all, but many scientific studies which treat the people in the experiment as literally subjects, right? By contrast, Brian's model is they're active participants in their own health. No one can make you healthier other than yourself. You can't, people go to the doctor and they have an appointment and they expect it to hit them like Thor's hammer, like a 10-minute, appointment. Okay, now I'm on the right track. Thanks, doc. Boom, like just some miracle intervention. By contrast, when you go to the gym or something, there's giant propaganda posters on the wall that say, your health is your responsibility, lift, and so on and so forth. And when you take it into your own hands and you're a participant, not a subject, everything changes. So that's why I know it wasn't the focus of what you're saying, but pushing back on n equals 1 is delegitimizing. I think we should say, actually, it's large effect size and replication that is legitimizing.
And then also I'd say one thing that when I was building Braintree years ago, I would spend all day trying to build something in a methodical and systematic way. So version 1 leads to version 2 to version 3. You eliminate bad stuff, you add more good stuff. And then I would go home and I'd overeat. And it's like I wouldn't be able to stop myself from overeating. And so I was engaging in this self-destructive behavior that I was seemingly incapable of stopping myself from doing. And I thought, what a weird world where I can apply my intelligence to make something else improve systematically, and then I'm this self-destructive thing that I can't quite correct. And so with Blueprint, we were trying to build an algorithm that could take better care of me than I can myself. I was trying to acknowledge that I'm an inferior form of intelligence, that I am an animal, I've got emotions, I am subject to those emotions, sometimes I make errors in judgment, and so this version we've built is very analog. It's not, I don't have nanobots in my bloodstream doing this real time. But I think what's interesting with your question, is where I would take it is, I've tried to accelerate my own personal rate of improvement. And so we say from measurement for baseline, scientific evidence, to the protocol, to then implementation, measurement, and we repeat that. And so as measurement tools get better and better, of course, you can increase in speed because measurement is the key. You want to see what the effect is, you want to catch something when it's going wrong. And so as you think about more broadly as this scales to society, there's a certain speed at which things roll out through society. It's got to go through nation states and approvals. It has to go through a whole bunch of different mechanisms. Whereas when you're doing this individually and you have the mechanism for measurement, you have this very rapid speed. And so I see that it's both like it's encouraging to me that technology could be broadly disseminated. It's also, I think, possible that we could see hyper acceleration in a small set of people who have the robustness of the measurement, even more so than we do today. But we'll see. But that's, as I've tried to do myself, I've just been looking at clock speeds between how fast we move and how fast others move, and it's just glacial compared to what we're doing.
Hi, my name is Ninos Mansour. I used to help co-manage Arrington Capital, which is a crypto fund started by the founder of TechCrunch, and now run a firm called DeSci Capital. My question is about demography and birth rates. So it's pretty clear when governments try to sort of build demographic policies, they fail. On the one hand, the one-child policy in China. On the other hand, the Greek Prime Minister yesterday made a statement about sort of Greece being on this cataclysmic path to demographic collapse. They've tried a lot of things to have Greeks have more babies, and it's not working. So interested to hear your take on the DeSci take on demography and sort of demographic collapse in two contexts. So one is, let's say, Western European countries, which are currently very cooked in terms of, being below replacement rates. And then another, I guess, decentralized example. So I'm Assyrian with an A. We're the very esoteric ethnic group. There's 3 million of us. We're fully out of our homeland because of sort of geopolitical reasons. I'd love for Assyrians to have more babies, but they're everywhere and they're across the world. So how can I leverage DeSci to think about birth rates?
Gotcha. Okay, so I've got all new content for you. Ready? All right, this is not it's a blog post I'm going to publish. Ready? The title is 1,000 heir greater than millionaire. Okay, 1,000 HEIR. All right. So here's the premise. The premise is that you can have 1,000 descendants in your lifespan by about age 80 if you follow the following playbook. It's actually very counterintuitive, but it's both easy and hard. You start having, and so the first sentence I'm going to say, you're going to say, well, I can't do that, but you can start with a delay. You start having children at age 18. You have 10 children until age 27, okay? And then at age 18, for them, they start having 10 kids. So your first grandchild is born at 36, and your first great-grandchild is born at 54. And you can work out the math. It's actually convolution, where it becomes like the births get staggered in an interesting way. But by about age 80, 81, depending on where you're off by one, you have 1,000 descendants because you have 10 children and 100 great-grandchildren and 1,000 great-grandchildren. It's saying you can't take it with you. Like your wealth, if you accumulate it at the end, it just goes to some foundation, is spent on some woke stuff, whatever, right? But here, you could be like Genghis Khan and have 1,000 descendants in one lifespan. Now, the thing is, what I described there is completely feasible. It's completely legal still, right? But here, think about the machine you need to build for that, right? First is you need to be like on your market set, go at age 18, okay? And you need to have a partner that's willing to do that. And you'd have to successfully transmit your culture down to your 10 kids, and then again to their, 100 grandkids. But if you did that, you could be the equivalent of a millionaire. You could be a thousandaire, okay? And if you got, other people to do this in a few more generations, I need to come up with a pun, but the blank shall inherit the earth, okay? So you will just, the thing about demography is everybody assumes that, an average fertility rate is a constant, right? But it's an average, it's over a population distribution. Even in Japan, for example, there's high fertility towns. In any parameter, there's going to be variation, and those with high fertility will out-reproduce those with lower fertility, right? So if you choose to, assume that governments are completely useless and states aren't going to fix this. Maybe the Chinese government will do, they are doing a bunch of things that are worth understanding because they are actually aware of the demography problem. And so they're doing things like trying to mainstream IVF, and so trying to boost IVF from 1 or 2% of people to 10 or 20% of people and subsidize it. They've got the 3-child policy now. They're going after school education and trying to make it cheaper to have housing. That's why they're intentionally bringing down the housing market to do that. Xi was houses should be for living in, not for investing in. Whether all that works, God only knows. It didn't work with COVID, but if it's possible for a total state to boost reproductive rates or to replace people with robots or some combination, China will do it. But I think for the rest of the world, this is sort of taking matters into your own hands, so to speak, okay? Thousandaire over millionaire. Let me pause there.
Maybe two things, one more question here, and can we then get a microphone over here to Her Excellency, please?
Hi, this is Danny from Dubai. I'm just welcome you guys to Dubai, and thanks for coming all this way. How do you guys see biotech has a lot of challenges and when it comes to funding, because it's a really long cycle before anything can give you an ROI. And so a lot of people are hesitant in that challenge. So sometimes it's charities or endowments that are doing most of the work. As we go into DeSci and more decentralized science, how do you guys see getting more investors on board, and how can maybe you bring it back to Dubai? Is there anything you see in your trip here that Dubai and the UAE as well can work with the likes of the mini circles in Honduras? And is that something you guys are looking into, bringing out of the, let's say, US very regulated environment and spending more time here in the Middle East and looking at that? Thank you.
I mean, I know that Minicircle, for example, I think they spent a total of a few $1 million developing their plasma-mediated gene therapy. And so when they found a jurisdiction that was cooperative, that they were able to do so and be safe, that they were able to, when we were diligencing them for my gene therapy, they complied with FDA build standards. And so they were able to ensure the quality in the process and do so for a fraction of the cost. And so it's interesting to look at a few factors. One is if you look at the cost of developing in biology, it's been increasingly favorable for several years, and those curves are getting better and better, the cost of all the elements. And then two is the economic arbitrage in these jurisdictions. And so I agree with you, it has been quite challenging, and that money has primarily flowed to software as a service and like real estate, things that have much more predictable models, but I think it's just a different era now. And so what I'm seeing on the ground myself, I'm bullish on the speed and cost of development, and that these companies are able to build on what the previous gen of biotech companies were able to build out for everyone else.
Yeah, I'd add to that basically, there are fast paths to market if people treat FDA, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, they treat it like it was S&P orbitals, you know what I mean? As if these were the quantized, levels of like for electrons, like a fact of nature that that you have to deal with, as opposed to obstacles that were set up by man and that can be routed around by man, And so just to give a few concrete things that one can do. A, drug repurposing. There's lots of drugs that are approved for purpose A that you can off-label prescribe for purpose B, right? Off-label prescription is still legal it's meant to sound bad, right? But essentially the AMA and the medical lobby are strong enough that they could resist to some extent FDA's imperialism over them. It's an alien versus predator kind of dynamic. And so because of that, there's some independent, I like doctors more because there's some that are independent minded. And so they can, using their own judgment as a doctor, say, okay, I've read the literature, this drug is approved for purpose A, I'm going to prescribe it for purpose B or C or D, right? What can't be done is a pharma rep cannot tell the doctor, oh, this paper that says that the drug that was prescribed for purpose A can be used for purpose B. Even if it's a true statement, even if it's in the literature, even if it's actually replicated and so on and so forth, if a pharma rep does that and tells the doctor about it, that's off-label marketing. FDA has jurisdiction over the pharma company, not the doctor, and they can like throw that guy in prison, they'll attack them, they'll hit them with fines and so on and so forth. So the FDA is just far more evil than you think it is, and and really they call themselves FDA, they don't say the FDA, they call themselves FDA. They systematically attack the distribution of true facts within the system. Now, they can only regulate pharma companies, they can't regulate individuals in the same way that the FAA is set up to go after Boeing and Airbus, but not individual drone hobbyists, and the SEC is set up to go after Goldman and Morgan, but not individual cryptocurrency holders. So an important, in two senses of the term, they're not set up to deal with lots of these small moving particles, and they're also not set up reputationally to go after them, because if they're crushing a biohacker for doing something to improve their own health, even if in theory FDA has authority to do that, in practice it hurts their own reputation. It's like it's showing that they're actually enforcing on your freedom as opposed to protecting you from the big bad company. So everything that you can do that is basically about empowering individuals, example, you read the literature and you say, these are 20 off-label things that I think are good, and you have an MD publish that, and then you have large distribution for that. It's kind of what Huberman is doing. It's kind of what Brian is doing, right? But off-label is a massive loophole that you can run a truck through. You could literally have a whole blog devoted to just that. You'd have to figure out the legalities of it. Maybe you need a doctor on it or something like that. That's A. That's more generally drug repurposing, because if you get an off-label use that's there, you can probably repurpose some supplement. B is diagnostics and quantified self and all the body monitoring, like the Apple Watch type stuff. That's now at tens of millions, hundreds of millions of installs. There's a lot that can be done with that. And that's also fast time to market because those devices are already there. There could probably be some Apple Watch-based social network or something like that that you could do. And third is like medical tourism. And this is something where you have to solve the reputational issue, because you actually might have much better medical care in Turkey or Bumrungrad, which I mentioned earlier, or some other hospital. But you need to have either American or Western or some other kind of high prestige doctor over there that is putting their name on the line and is a bridge between the high quality, low cost jurisdiction and the low quality, high cost jurisdiction to get people to go over there. And then again, you might be able to innovate faster. So those are like three paradigms. There's probably more, many more. I can talk about them, but in terms of how you could get biotech to market faster.
Yeah, a quick side note. I experienced this firsthand. I went hiking and I got a little cut. I needed to go to the ER room to get it sewed up. And I was on the table and he said, "So are you taking any meds?" I thought, oh no. So I said, okay, I'll give this a go. I said, yeah, I'm on metformin. He said, the diabetic drug? Yeah. I'm on rapamycin. The drug they give people when they have an organ transplant? Yeah. I'm on dastatinib, the leukemia drug? Yeah. Son, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And so it just, yeah, we have found a great opportunity in taking existing drugs and repurposing, and they've been some of the most efficacious things we've done. So yeah, there's plentiful opportunity, and yeah, it's oftentimes, and it just shows that the majority, I mean, it really drew a contrast for me of I'm so involved in this that I sometimes forget that the rest of the world just has no idea this is even an opportunity. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can immediately get access to.
And then once you got the information out there, places like India will do generic drugs. So when the information is out there, then you go to places where they just don't even obey the crazy pharma, Basically, in some ways, big pharma and FDA are adversarial, but in many ways they're cooperative, where FDA likes it that a big company can jump through all of its idiotic hoops and Big Pharma likes that FDA sets up these hoops because it knocks out the small companies, and both them cooperate on the artificial scarcity of regulation and IP, okay, to essentially say they're going to choke out all the low-cost providers. But other jurisdictions, once you put the information that this drug can be repurposed for this, other jurisdictions can just say, we're not abiding by that at all, like India did for many years with generics, and just manufacture at low cost. And so that combination of information and manufacturing, you could maybe get something out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's also crazy that like huge databases that are currently in the control of government or universities that could be mined where people take those drugs.
Yeah, who wants to go Aaron Swartz?
Just even be more explored, right?
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'll tell. Go ahead, finish what you're saying.
No, I just, you go finish the point.
So like, who knows how Hollywood was founded? How was Hollywood founded? Edison had all the patents for like what would be called at the time and still motion pictures, and he was in like the New Jersey area. So the guys who did Hollywood, Neil Gabler wrote this book, An Empire of Their Own. The guys who did Hollywood went 3,000 miles away. They went to LA. It was good for scenery. You had deserts and beaches and stuff. But it was also good for patents because they were far away from the guy who could enforce all the motion picture patents. So they just broke all the patents. They built their businesses. They made enough money to fight the lawyers. Sounds a lot like crypto in some ways, right? And they won, right? And so that kind of strategy could be applied to lots of things. Like in particular, I think there's going to be at least 3 AIs. There is the regulated, Bidenized AI of the US, right? There's the Chinese AI. And if we're lucky, there's the Bitcoin style, BitTorrent style, pirate-based style, decentralized AI, where you're training on every Hollywood movie. You're training on every public MP3 data set. You're doing to Hollywood what they did to Edison to get started in the first place. That's your ethical, justification. Like these guys didn't get, how did Google get started? They scraped the entire web. How did Facebook get started? They scraped every single, Facebook. And can you scrape Facebook today? No, you can't. It's banned by their terms of service, right? So they pull up the ladder behind them, right? Once you understand how they got to where they are, they F the law, and then they became the law, right? So if you take every biomedical data set, you could do something like Sci-Hub or LibGen, and you could just put it out there. Now, today, those are some large data sets, so it might be hard to do that, right? But I want to see somebody be the Aaron Swartz. I mean, don't get caught, okay? Like Aaron Swartz got caught by the government and he was, sentenced and all this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, he killed himself. But be like, Satoshi and win, right? And be like Snowden, don't be in exile, right? There's things you can do where if you actually want to push for freedom, things like what Alexandra Elbakyan is doing with Sci-Hub and with LibGen are more important than what 1,000 scientists are doing, because she's actually getting, you know Sci-Hub, right? Do you guys know Sci-Hub? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, all right, you're going to tell them what Sci-Hub is? Do you guys know, who here knows what Sci-Hub is?
Yeah.
Oh my God. In this audience, people don't know what Sci-Hub is? Okay. Sci-Hub is basically a site. Wow, go ahead.
No, go ahead, yeah.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
And now, okay, this is the highest signal thing you guys will get in the entire lecture, okay? Everybody in DeSci should be 100% pro Sci-Hub, because what is Sci-Hub? It's basically, go ahead.
No, you go.
I think she's a lady. It could be a pseudonym. I actually haven't seen her. She calls herself Alexandra Elbakyan, and what she's basically done is taken every single paper that's behind a paywall, and Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this paywall, okay? And she's basically made them available online, and all you need to do is paste in the digital object identifier link, and it'll just give you a PDF, right? And so she's unlocked all this information, and you could train an insanely good LLM on just this stuff, right? And you already paid for it, since it's your tax dollars that went to fund all these NIH and NSF and so on studies. And you have Elsevier and these other, publishers that are just taxing you a second or third or fourth time to read the stuff that you already paid for as a citizen, right? And so now this is just the true Punisher, vigilante, Satoshi, Bitcoin style, truly open science, where she just opens all the science, right? And lots of academics actually say they use Sci-Hub, even if they have ostensible academic subscriptions, because it's just easier and faster to just get the paper out, right? So, like, massive replication of Sci-Hub, making it completely unbannable, putting it everywhere, putting it on chain, that's actually a very valuable thing. If DeSci isn't aware of that, now they're aware of it.
Yeah, I think some are. I just didn't directly catch it. Your Excellency, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you very much, Brian, and as well Balaji. Yes. So my question goes back to my personal experience. Back in 2011, I started the whole concept of longevity in the Middle East. And I was attacked by counselor, by religious people, because I'm trying to take over a character of God, that I'm trying to elongate my biological age. Unfortunately, I had no chance even to explain myself and what I'm doing. I am a physician. I am specialized in regenerative medicine. I did my postgrad in regenerative medicine from Japan. I came back in 2011, and I thought I can do a lot in my country, and it was not easy. So as a physician, I applied many of those elements, which is very scientifically approved on myself. I was able to reduce my biological age. I am 48, but my biological age of my ovary is 28. My liver and my kidney is only 16. And unfortunately, during this time, all the literatures which is going on, they don't identify the gender when there is any intervention. All the standard, all the medication for male and female is the same. And they don't even bear in mind that I have my period 5 days per month, and very soon I will go in my menopause. So these things were not considered, and other things which I came to know myself, and I acquired a new skill, a new school, where I make sure I know the ethnicity of my client and their gender very well considered. So what about your approach? So right now, that's why I'm here with Max. I like the platform, I like the decentralization, I like the transparency in the whole concept. And I was trying to promote this area back in 2013, but it didn't open the appetite of pharma company. So right now, I am on ribamycin. I take it twice a week. I'm on metformin. And at the same time, I stop resveratrol because I believe it doesn't fit with my liver enzyme as per my ethnicity. And I take good care of my microbiome, very, very well good care of my microbiome. And I take extra care on my sleep. And I came up with a different approach where right now there's too many colleagues. And I was able with another physician, her name is Eveline, I don't know if you met her. We established an institute. It is open for public, but you need to be professional, either scientist or MD, where we will teach you proper guidelines as a physician, how you can help your patient on longevity. So my question to you, did you bear in mind these two elements, which I believe they have a profound effect on the prognosis or even the outcome of your intervention, ethnicity and gender?
Yeah, so first, we should be friends.
We are already.
we have a lot in common. Good job on your biometrics.
And I took care of around 311 of my close friends and family. They are on the same boat with me.
Have they seen similar results?
Oh, I'm not doing any PR. I am fully booked till next year, March.
Yeah. That's what's exciting is if you do apply the science systematically, it works. I've seen the same thing. And it does get a lot of criticisms. So people have an endless list of things to use to criticize. Whether you want to take it from a scientific angle or religious or cultural, there's just so many ways people can criticize it. So we've been trying to extend. So I've been doing it myself. We had a female do blueprint. So not in the entire thing that I did, but she's 27 and she implemented the majority of the stack. And then we measured 200 biomarkers. And so we were trying to poke around at this question of like what happens in a 27-year-old and a female. And it was pretty interesting. We discovered quite a few things. We didn't end up going down the rabbit holes we've gone with me. We just couldn't do it as a team. But yeah, we do want to pursue all these different paths. They're quite, they're expensive. And the rabbit holes, like every person you know, when you begin measuring them, you find several rabbit holes to pursue. And so, yeah, so I'm with you. It's needed. It's helpful when you have it. And when you don't, you kind of have a blind spot. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot I could say, but I think the aspect of you saying something in 2011 and getting pushback on it, I think the media environment has changed today in 2024 because we can quote go direct, and you can just build your own social media profile, and you can speak in your own voice, unfiltered, and make your own points. And so I think Dubai and the Middle East has secularized to a significant extent over the last decade or so. So I think it's a more receptive time, and sometimes the cultural conditions seem to be there as well as the technological prerequisites, and I think we're starting to be there.
The thing that you've probably seen, that I've seen as well, is that people will run their mouths, but the moment they have the chance to do anything to restore vitality, they do it without thinking. Like you take Ozempic, and even with the side effect profile it has, and even even if it's not the ideal drug, and if it has some complications, people will do it instantaneously. And those who've sworn that they don't want whatever their long list of things. So I really don't think that the opposition to longevity, extending lifespan, is real. People are just expressing their fears about themselves and the world, but it doesn't mean anything.
The only thing which I believe maybe I have an extra, I am utilizing the regenerative medicine in big extent. So I do take secretome to a functional unit every 7 months. And that's really worked very well with some of my clients with liver and fatty liver and high cholesterol, if they have a familiar hypercholesteremia mutation. So I have a different aspect, which I can see the huge speed of the whole process.
I think we're coming up close to an hour.
Yeah.
You guys have to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Balaji.
Thanks, everyone.